Okay, so we all know why we're here, right? Okay. Basically, we want to start to figure out how we're going to really better incorporate or find out what this differentiation of instruction really is. We all have an idea of, or we think we have an idea of what differentiated instruction looks like, but we're going to find out today if what we think it looks like and what it actually is match up. So when you're thinking about differentiating instruction, what I want you all to do at your tables, and you can get into groups, first is jot down what your current beliefs and understandings of differentiation is. You can write it down on your paper, that's fine. Just jot down what your current beliefs are. Assume you're explaining it to a new teacher, someone who's brand new to education, and they need to understand what differentiation is.
Dave already cheated. I already knew that was going to be the first question.
And then you can get together with other people around you. Then I want you to turn and talk to somebody close to you and discuss what you came up with.
And then this one. Yeah, this could not be. We do a quick class and then might be a whole subject of it, but that's part of that.
It's like a math problem.
So again, after you come up with your own definition of your own understanding, turn and talk with somebody around you and compare answers. So.
Yeah, I wrote differentiated instruction is another way to instruct, to give the instruction to all, to students of all levels.
As far as
Okay. You can get together with somebody around you. Doesn't matter who.
I just want to try, maybe I missed it.
No, I'm just talking.
which is not necessarily
Oh, these chairs are too small.
Well, that's why they're built for the 8th graders.
That's what I'm saying, they have it for the class, we got again, technology, in classroom. So you're not doing it's not the same. You have classes outside. No, but you have to go to the class. No, but it's right. You have to do both, blend it, both.
Take a couple more seconds. Okay, so let me bring you all back now. What are some of the things that you came up with? What are some of your beliefs of what differentiation of instruction actually is?
I mean, I simply put that differentiation is simply modifying lesson plans based on individual student need.
Okay.
So,
I put you're tailoring your lessons to individuals or groups in the class based on the goals of the lesson as well as their individual learning needs or style. And you want them to master or demonstrate what was learned, again, based on their learning needs and style.
Okay.
And style of learning.
Okay. Anybody else have anything different want to add to it?
We put 7 things. You want to hear all 7?
You want 7 things. Okay, let's name them.
Number 1, project-based learning.
Okay.
Number 2, flipped classrooms.
Okay.
3, constructivist learning. Teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Blended learning, number 4.
Okay.
Skipped one, I'm sorry. So modeling.
Okay.
Modeling with whiteboard specifically. 5, 6, developing multiple entry points to access content.
Okay.
The use of visual aids or manipulatives, things like that.
Okay.
And tiered activities, high, medium, low, similar to
Okay. Now, of all those 7 that you just named, are those, how many of them are actually define what differentiated instruction is and how many of them are examples of differentiated instruction.
Right.
Yes.
They're all examples of differentiated.
Okay. That was my point. That's what I was getting at.
We're supposed to hug.
Last week, just to let you all know that I was not just off gallivanting someplace last week. I was actually at a conference, and I had the opportunity to speak with Carol Tomlinson, the author of Differentiated Instruction. And she let me have this. This is what differentiation is not. How many of these things up here have you said, thought, maybe wrote down just now? Or at some time in your careers? Or have you heard other people say?
Oh, definitely heard other people
Yeah,
say.
say,
Okay, so that's what differentiation is not. Now we find out what it is. Student-focused way of thinking about teaching and learning, based on content and student needs, purposeful use of flexible grouping, as opposed to just grouping students within the classroom. Okay, so, a lot of definitions, I'm sure you have a lot of different questions as far as what it actually is. So what will we think about to plan and practice quality differentiation? That's what the overall thought is going to be for today. Now, this is what differentiation is. And I gave you the handout so you can look at it from there, or you can go ahead and copy it down if you so choose. But differentiation is not a set of strategies. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of people think that it is. But rather, it's a way of thinking about teaching and learning. It's a way of thinking about teaching and learning. Yes, you need to have multiple entry points.
Excuse me?
Yes, ma'am.
On these, we can't see them. Can I see that again? Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you.
No problem. And I'm going to also just email you all the whole PowerPoint anyway, so you'll actually have the more clearer version of it. Or I'll probably put it in the drive so you can access it anytime. So the line of logic for differentiated instruction states that you have, at the bottom, kids differ as learners. We all know that. That should be a no-brainer pretty much. But then to learn well, each kid needs challenge and success. And of course, that's going to look different for each child. And are we really doing that for each child in your classroom? We can't accomplish this, of course, by ignoring their differences. So for every person who's sitting in your classroom, you need to make sure that you're addressing their particular differences. You recognize their differences. You know that there are different people in your classroom. Now it's a matter of addressing them. And attending to those differences requires a flexible approach to teaching. I'm sure a lot of these things I'm preaching to the choir, but we need to kind of be reminded of a lot of them. And then, of course, it's rooted in an inviting environment, assessment to inform instruction, and flexible management. So that's assessment to inform instruction. So you're gauging where they are and what their abilities are to let you know where you're going to go next with those students. So basically, differentiation is a sequence of common sense decisions made by teachers with student-first orientation. Common sense decisions made by teachers with a student-first orientation. And these are the 5 areas of differentiation, 5 things that you need to remember. Ensuring an environment that actively supports students. So we're looking at environment. In the work of learning. So we're always telling students that they have a job. Their job is coming to school. Well, this kind of just reinforces that. This is the work of learning, and that's what they're doing. Second, absolute clarity. powerful learning destination, the KUDs. What they know, what they understand, and what they're going to do next. Persistently knowing where students are in relation to the destination all along the way. That's your formative assessment. Assessment for and about instruction. So you should always be checking in with your students, finding out how they're doing, what they're up to, and what their understanding of the learning objective is.
What did you
Yes.
say the D was for KUD?
Do what they should do, what they will do next. So it's what they know, what they understand, and what they will do. And then, of course, you're adjusting your teaching to make sure each student arrives at the destination and when possible, moves beyond it. So you want to make sure all of your students get to the same learning objective, and then, of course, wherever possible, that they are able to move past that objective. So you have environment, you have clarity or knowledge, you have curriculum, you have so knowledge, assessment, everything that they're going to need. And then finally, effective leadership and management of flexible classroom routines. So it's the flexible leadership and management, basically, work of the teacher managing that particular classroom. Any questions about any of these items? Kind of makes sense, right? Like it's common sense. These are the things that you're doing.
So
Yes.
I might have missed the opening context for this. Are we here because we're not doing this, or are we here to make sure that we are doing this?
Here to make sure that we are doing it.
Okay.
And some of you are, some of you can do it better, and based on the surveys that I sent out and the information I got back, as well as observations, I know that some of you want extra help in this.
Yeah.
So that's what the impetus was for this, to develop the extra support. Yes.
My comment about this is that it is all academic, which makes perfect sense. But one thing that I also try to, another area where I try to strive to make things fair is culturally. For example, we had to do Steve Jobs' speech. Naturally, parts of it had, the vocabulary had to be flushed out. We read it, we saw it, but the context of it, why is this important? Culturally, I had to balance that with Barack Obama's rules of life, Steve Jobs' rules of life, just to make sure everybody was included and to make sure everybody felt relevant. But I also had to find the Spanish subtitle version to make sure everybody in the room who could or could not understand English
And that's
was included.
and that's your environment. You're setting up the environment as well as managing the flexible classroom. So it is included in it. It sounds like it's all academic, but all those pieces do fall in there as well. So you are addressing those. And you'll realize that in order to be truly effective with your differentiation, these 5 things have to work together. You can't do any one thing in isolation. All 5 of them kind of work together, just like a well-oiled machine. If you were to take any one of these cogs out, the whole thing would just fall apart. Very similar to this. If you take any one of these items out, you're not really getting the full effect of the differentiation in your classroom. So basically, environment, curriculum, assessment, instruction, and leadership management all working together. Now, let's get you working a little bit. So turn and talk to your partner and answer these questions. How are these ideas about differentiation similar to the definitions that you already had? How are they different? And would it make any difference in practice in your classroom if the majority of teachers operated from this perspective on differentiation?
said what I wanted. Put down.
Can you please put the 5 slide back, because we can't,
This one?
thank you, thank you.
How are these things?
Because we can read that. Okay, so basically, how do they say, right?
I see the list of
Oh, for instance.
before anybody says, yeah, this is what we're talking
What,
about.
this, these questions?
He did.
Yeah, it's not as clear.
Okay, no problem.
Wait, hold on. I already asked him to switch it back to the other slide. So differentiation is going on here. I need the one,
I know, and that's why it's no problem. I'm cycling back and forth, that's
Your
why.
fingers get real tired, but it's just me.
We're saying generally,
I mean, but this is
differentiating is assisting outcomes of the kids. Style. But there's so much more than clarity. Flexibility of teacher, flexibility.
I mean, I sent videos
of
where they asked for, I
routines.
sent how it was they asked for them, like, oh, this is.
That's crucial, the flexible classroom routines. Where you can
I mean,
add additional
Well, going by the color.
handouts or,
But here's the funny part, that's what I think right here.
differentiating
I
materials
mean,
that will assist the low learner, the moderate learner, and the high learner. And still stimulate the high learner. Now more, and then I know this one. Yeah.
Step by step by step, something that you may not get able to do, so, I mean, obviously not.
Well, it's
It's a trusted
scaffolding questions.
That's tactile learning, right?
So that the higher,
Everybody's having to say, but
then different questions. Okay, different questions, especially for the higher learner. You know, so that the higher learner is still accelerating.
still okay. But I'm saying, not
But
100%.
you teach something different.
Yeah.
They're all the same questions.
Where you build upon the same.
Right, where the highlighter.
Challenging.
But the student.
That might be their best thing to do.
It's not.
But it's like,
Right.
He asked the same question.
I think it's both, because there's a lower picture, but in that.
Well,
Not
they don't
necessarily.
say
Not necessarily, you're right, they could have a different set of questions, they would have the same text, but they may have a different set of questions based on their abilities. That's how it's counted.
One set of questions.
Not necessarily.
Answering a lot of questions.
I mean, you can start at a basic question and then develop further.
Right, I mean, they can all begin with the same, like, 2 or 3 questions to get started with, to give you a baseline, and then they kind of go off into different areas, so your lower level, you'll stay at that, whatever level that is. And then your higher achievers, you can give them a different type of question that addresses a different level of linguistic science.
Yeah.
But it's all based on the same text. And it's taking on different forms and everything, but for the most part, it's still want them to really get to the higher levels as far as the analysis and the synthesis of information. And that's when they start creating their own knowledge. And you put those things together.
I'm saying you're part of the study of creating, oh my gosh, I'm after I started, I'm like, on the whole world, I was like, and I walked in today, or me, and saying, you guys, she's saying, I got my blueprint, but, just knowing, like, even, what we want to do is, the depth of knowledge.
For him, that's
The
his
fourth stage talks about
Emily is 3
and synthesizing types of eventually creating. And for those 7 or 8 words that we utilize in language, we should have them in every group. So we should speak and utilize them all the time consistently as a team. So that the kids, well, when I synthesize them, I was able to further, build upon it, and so, and if they don't understand language, that's really important. And understand what they're doing.
So, let me bring you back for a moment? Would anybody like to share it from what they've discovered or what they discovered as a group, the answers you came up with? So how are these kind of similar to what you already,
Can you go back a slide or two?
to which one?
Two.
This one?
Yeah,
Yes.
fourth bullet point, adjusting teaching to make sure each student arrives at the destination.
Mm-hmm.
So I initiated the conversation on, is it the same destination for everybody or just their destination? Because that's very different.
Well, the learning target still has to be the same. The learning target for the class is going to be the same. Now, the means by which they get there is going to be different, and the level of rigor when they get there might be a little bit different but that's going to be based on their particular abilities. But the destination still has to be the same. You have to bring everybody to the same place. How you do get there is how you differentiate.
When you say the same place, are you saying the same place in terms of grade
Leon,
level?
please report to the front desk. Esther, Leon, please
Not-
report to the front desk.
Not as far as grade level, we're talking as far as the objective for that particular class.
For example, and this is just like thinking algebraic expressions, let's just say that, for example, right? So there's a 5th grade level to that, there's a 6th grade level, 7th grade, so on and so forth. We have a student in our class, we were just talking about Chris, Rodriguez?
Christopher Rodriguez,
That's right.
his equation would be C plus 7 equals 10.
Yeah.
That's for him to work on. So
Mhm.
we'll have to figure out that C is equal to 3. We got an Emily, and her equation will be negative 3C plus 30 equals negative 9. That's her entry point.
Mm-hmm.
So,
But his is not on grade level. I think that's where you're going with that, right?
yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, like, so is it really just grasping it's not meaning that the destination isn't the grade level, the destination is the content, and that can be tiered at different levels, what you're trying to say?
Right.
Okay.
Because what's going to happen is you're getting at the destination, and then when possible, they move beyond it. So you are addressing the readiness. And so they may have the entry point as C plus 3 equals 7. May have to do that as their entry point for their readiness. Once they are able to master that, now they're ready to go on to the next level. And then you can get them to the negative 3C plus 20 equals whatever.
But
So
Plus 30.
You're slow-
Right.
So you're slowly building,
That's
you're
already
you're
not-
building them to that based on what their level of readiness is.
So one last question on top of that, is that destination necessarily in that same school year? Right, because we may get them to a point where he's supposed to be, but not at the point, not at the point where he's supposed to be, at a point where he can access some of his content on a certain level, but to get to the point where from Chris to Emily, he may not actually get to that point until the next grade. Technically, if you can, I feel like uncomfortable already as it is, moving a kid along to a point who's already not grasped the grades before him, but we kind of have no choice in the way that the system is set up in that respect, to move them forward with, to some degree, with the minimum at that point. Right?
Well, right, and you are moving them at least with the bare minimum. That you want to make sure that they have that foundation. A lot of our students don't even have that yet.
Yeah.
So if we can get them to that point, yes. Unfortunately, also because of the way that our system is set up, it really doesn't accommodate this. Because what this really speaks to is progress. It doesn't speak to absolute achievement, which is what gets measured. So this really just going by progress. So yeah, based on this, getting him to where, as far as he can possibly go this year. Then next year he has a higher jumping off point. That may be the time when he actually meets what he was supposed to meet, what other students have met this year. But that's dealing with progress. And unfortunately, in our system, we can't do that. But that's also what we have to really think about. Even though we're really being measured by absolutes, we have to start thinking about the progress the students are making. And that's where the differentiation really helps them out.
So it's like a moving target as opposed to one that's fixed. It's not
But-
a fixed target.
Well, it's a moving target. Well, not even really a moving target. It's a fixed target for that individual based on where he is. But his target may be a little bit lower than what it should be. Because again, it's based on his particular profile, what his particular needs are at that given moment in time.
We can relate that to the slopes, everybody have a different slope, so everybody have a bit different target.
Right.
So that's pretty much it.
Right, so it seems like they're moving just because they're in different places for each individual person. That's all. Any other thoughts?
Can you go back up again?
Not a problem. We want to make sure you get all of your questions answered.
Visual learning.
Apparently.
Yeah, because I was just thinking about the second bullet point, absolute clarity about a powerful learning destination. That becomes tricky when we have curriculum like Engage New York, where what the students will be able to do, they're heavily embedded with multiple things.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's where you really have to start to really flesh out what the curriculum is giving you, and therefore also where you think
Please come to the front desk.
and where you think you can move the students to based on what their profiles get telling you. Engage New York is a difficult curriculum. It is challenging, but I think the challenges comes in its own clarity. Because the curriculum itself isn't necessarily user friendly, but it is also set at a particular level, assuming that everybody is at the same place when we know that they're not. And which was kind of what you really demonstrated by this little cartoon. And I know it's a little blurry, so I'll read it out to you. Our teacher has an interesting theory. She says teaching is like bowling. All you can do is roll the ball down the middle and hope you touch most of the students. And of course, Charlie Brown says, she must be a terrible bowler.
Yep.
Because we know that, again, Engage goes right down the middle. And if we do that, we miss all the other people, the lower level and the higher level students that in our classrooms. And unfortunately, that's what ends up taking place. So you end up missing a lot of the students that you were hoping to reach, hoping to touch. Yes.
Well, for me, to finish up what Derek was saying, it doesn't end in the classroom. For example, I have an assessment tomorrow. It involves figurative language. A lot of my students were not born here, so I have to go back in order to go forward. Even say some things in different language. And then I have some who, combined with that, are at the first grade level. So, of all the different types of figurative language, I had to read through the test, okay, it's only requesting simile, metaphor, personification, although there are at least 12 major ones. Review those, review them again, have the students give me examples. Okay, those who are still struggling with it, okay, I'm going to put you in a group over here. And those who are at the first grade level, okay, of all of these, which one is this? Okay, why? Of all of these, which one is this? Okay, write me one. Here's the rest of the work. So you owe me this tomorrow when you come in. So that's giving them extra time at home, so their learning just doesn't take place in the classroom, or the trying doesn't just take place in the classroom. So no, this student is not going to be where this student is today, but you have to give them something by tomorrow so you have a chance to do better on this test, or be almost as successful. So I think the whole point of it is the learning.
Right, and again,
Rodriguez, please report
that
to the
goes
front
back
desk.
to
Jaylene Rodriguez, please
the
report
point
to the
4
front desk.
as well as point 3. Persistently knowing where your students are in relation to their destination, and so that's your formative. You're constantly assessing the students, and that assessment informs how you approach them going forward, and what information you're going to give them. So again, all these things working in tandem are what gets us through the day. Let's read that for a moment. Because we all know this, that all of our students in our classrooms are different. However, this is what happens. Now, I'm not saying that it happens everywhere, and obviously from different answers in this room, we try to get